Hello, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Lynn. I'm a customer service rep here at WarmlyYours. Today I'm joined by one of our technical service team members. Can you introduce yourself, Anatoly?
Hello, my name is Anatoly, and I'm with WarmlyYours tech support and product team. Going to be happy to talk with you all guys today.
Awesome. So we are going to be going over choosing the right snow melting control for your snow melting system. And Anatoly, as one of our tech team members and one of our product team members, is super knowledgeable on all of our different control options. So we're really going to go in and learn a little bit more about all of the different options that you have available. If at any point there are any questions, feel free to ask away either at the sidebar or at the bottom of the screen in the Ask a Question module. If we don't see your question right away, we'll definitely get to it by the end of the presentation today. So like I said, we're going to be going over our snow melting systems, and then we're going to talk about the different controls that we have for outdoor heating, as well as the different sensors. So we're going to get in depth and kind of walk through the differences. So just kind of starting out, snow melting systems are becoming a little bit more popular, installed in, they can go in pretty much any kind of pavement, asphalt, concrete, pavers. So we see them done a lot in driveways, we see them a lot in walkways, even heated benches, patios, things like that. So this is actually essentially a system that will be embedded in that pavement and will evenly heat the surface as the snow comes down to keep it from freezing, and will let it melt and evaporate. So we do offer systems that can be manual, so you can turn them on and off yourself. We also offer automated systems so that with the right control and sensor, it'll turn itself on and off, and it's completely hassle-free, kind of out of sight, out of mind for you. So going over the installation process, the first thing you want to begin before even really planning out your system is looking at your electrical requirements and your electrical availability. So can you kind of tell us, how one would do that?
Yeah, for sure. So those snow melting systems, of course, we're talking about electric systems that are using electricity to produce heat. And the planning stage for these type of projects are pretty critical, just because those are consuming some power depending on the size of the project, and you really want to ensure that the whole planning and the specifically electrical planning here is done right. So just a simple example: if you have a 200 amp service at your house, maybe 100, 120 amps of those are already in use for all the electrical loads around the house, and you only have 80, 60 amps to spare. You really want to share that information to us, so when we are designing, planning the project for you, we taking that to the account and kind of going in the right direction. And actually,
Awesome.
one thing to add here, as our second bullet point here talks about, is anytime we provide you with a quote, the quote includes electrical plan and installation plan. Those plans already provide you a good amount of information that an electrician needs to get the proper calculation or see what's the size of the system we are designing. So always, anytime, either it's that first rough quotation or you in the midst of preparing for a purchase, always share those electrical plans with your electricians, so everybody, kind of all the parties, are up to date in terms of the specification of the system.
Absolutely. And another thing that we offer are pre-project planning meetings. I don't know if we're going to get into that a lot today, but I did just want to toss it out there. And Anatoly, you're usually a part of a lot of these meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially, they are free. We'll help you out, make sure that everybody, all the contractors, all the electricians, everybody do a quick Zoom call, phone call, and we can make sure that everybody's on the same page and all questions are answered before actually starting the project.
Yeah, those snow melting projects are eventually kind of a step up from maybe your simple traditional electric floor heating projects. So yeah, I'm definitely doing quite a good number of those pre-planning for pre-project meetings, and those are very, going to be very quick, but very informative in terms of kind of what's going on, what's needed, how to prepare for it. We definitely never want to have a customer who, receives some preliminary calculations and just looking at the electricity numbers, thinking, okay, that I cannot do it. I'm just not going to do this project. There is more than one way to get the system up and running with different controls or different coverage options. And again, we're definitely going to be talking about that later today. So stay with us.
Absolutely. So this is a really great drawing. Can you kind of walk us through what we're looking at here, Anatoly?
Yeah, I like that drawing. We call it system map or kind of typical line diagram for all the components. That's a very helpful drawing, not only for electrician, but just for maybe a homeowner, a contractor who's just kind of planning a project overall, just want to understand what components involved, what needs to be purchased, things like that. So here we outline kind of the inside and outside sections. So eventually everything on the left here in that orange kind of highlighting is the inside part. So that's where your breaker panel is already in. That's where the relay panel will be mounted. Keep in mind those relay panels that we provide, those are rated NEMA 1, meaning that they should only be mounted inside. So that's eventually why it's always going to be showcased as an inside device. Then, of course, controller is another part that's going to be mounted inside. There will be one controller that can be mounted outside, or actually, I should say, should be mounted outside. We're going to, again, talk about that later. But that's really traditional. That's going to be all of your components that's going to go inside. And then, of course, outside, you're going to eventually install your heating cables or mats. That's a must. The J-box is sort of an optional thing because your heating cables and mats will have a 20-foot cold lead pre-attached to it. So if that distance from a heating cable to the relay panel is about 20 feet, and you can run that existing lead directly to the relay panel, you definitely don't need a J-box or junction box. If that distance is longer, of course, yes, you would then run the leads to the box, your electrician will make that extension from there and run his wire to the relay panel. And then, of course, the last two things in the lower right corner, you can see your aerial mounted sensor as an example and a high temperature limit sensor. That's eventually your sensing devices to get the system up and running correctly.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like this picture. I think this actually, I saw this fun story when I was interviewed, and they were like, "Can you make sense of this?" like years ago when I started at the company, and I was able to make enough sense of it back then, and now I really know what I'm looking at. So speaking of the J-box, obviously you kind of went into a little bit of detail there. This is actually what it will look like, and it is kind of a bit of a spaghetti bowl. Obviously all the cables are coming out of it, and really that's what it's there for, is to take all those cables and really make it easier to run them from the driveway or wherever you're heating back to the house.
Yep.
So again, this is where all splices and extensions need to be made, and this does need to be accessible. So you don't want to bury it somewhere. You want it to be somewhere that can be accessed if needed.
Yep.
So selecting a spot for the control, you kind of touched on, indoor, outdoor controls. Can you kind of tell us what you should be looking for?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, most of our controls eventually would be mounted indoors. Some of them are actually only rated to be mounted indoors. You'll find one or two controllers that kind of rating-wise can be mounted outdoors, but the only kind of unique circumstances where you would mount them outdoors would be maybe some large industrial applications where some maintenance people need to get access to it, and that access can only be provided in some outdoor, side of the building type setup. Typical residential applications, you want the controller to be inside because anytime you want to check the status of your controller or the system, or just manually override it, or do any kind of reset or things or adjust settings, you definitely don't want to go outside. You want to have it indoors. You want to have a quick, easy access to it, check things, and be done with it. So yeah, always kind of plan for mounting that inside, kind of just like as we show here on the picture. The control here is actually just that device towards the right with a display. The four boxes to the left of it are the relay panels. And again, don't be don't be spooked that you need so much space or so much equipment here. This is, to my knowledge, this is a very, very large application. That's why you can see kind of four different zones with four different relay panels. So that's a substantially larger application than your typical maybe driveway or walkway and stairs heating. So
Absolutely.
that's shortly about the controls and where you want to mount that. The only kind of unique controller would be our value controller. We'll talk about that in depth in just a couple of slides, but that's the controller that it's pretty much a combination of a sensor and controller. So as soon as I say sensor, you want to think outside, right? Because that's where the sensor will be sensing the snow.
Absolutely. And speaking of those kind of scary looking relay panels, can you kind of tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, this is kind of like we call it sizing guide. Probably a quick pause here. You don't need to memorize that. You don't need to figure out how to do all that. That's just a sizing guide in case you electrician needs to kind of double check things or so. We size the relay panels for you. We calculate how many mats or cables you need or how many relay panels and what size you need. This is more just again information and a sizing guide that tells you that, let's say you have four 120-volt cables. That would mean you would want to get a small relay panel because it has four connections. Or if you have 12 120-volt cables, you will get a large relay panel because it has 12 connections. So that's kind of, in simplicity, that's kind of really all it is. But again, don't worry about that part at all. That's just your schematic, but we size all these relay panels for you to make your system economical and easy to wire.
Absolutely. And we always want to make sure that all electrical and building codes are followed. So you do want to be talking to your electrician and your local code authority to make sure that you're kind of double checking that everything in your area is going to go well with this. So looking at the controls for snow melting, like I said, we're kind of going to break these down for you. So the first thing you'd want to decide is if you want the system to be automatic or manual. So all of our automatic controls are going to detect temperature and moisture or precipitation so that the system will start warming when it begins to snow. It's not going to turn on when it's, 50 degrees and raining. It's not going to turn on when it's, 20 degrees and not snowing. It's pretty good at just recognizing when snow is falling and when it needs to turn itself on so that it can start warming up at the beginning of the snowfall instead of when there's accumulation. So we're going to kind of break down, again, the differences between the automatic controllers and manual controllers and some of the pros and cons of each. So this is all of our controls, and first, we're going to go into our zone breaker. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about that, Anatoly?
Yeah, so Zone Breaker Touchscreen Multi-Zone is our most recent kind of addition to the snow melting controls lineup. Again, we're going to start kind of with the toughest and sort of most advanced controller, simply because this is a controller that usually will be used in kind of very specific set of circumstances. And that's where I'm going to circle back to that slide we were talking about, the breaker panel, right? So if you have a limited available electricity, right, limited capacity at your breaker panel, but you have a larger area that you need to cover and you really need to cover that area without really sacrificing on the coverage, that's where you will be utilizing the zone breaker controller, because what it can do, it can switch your large area, not switch, but really split that large area into 2, 3, or 4 zones. And the benefit in this is that you can now run only one section at a time. So let's try to make it simple. Imagine you have a system that is 150 amps total, but you only have 50 amps to spare. So what that controller is actually going to do for you, it's only going to run 50 amps at a time. So, it's going to run 1/3 of your system for an hour, then second third of your system for an hour, and then the final third of your system for an hour. And it will circle back over and over until all the snow is melted. And of course, as an outcome, you still get your whole system up and running and melting, but it's only going to be using that only available limited amount of power. So again, like I said, it's a little bit of complicated control. That's not what you're going to be doing on a typical snow melting projects, but we decided to kind of start with that tricky thing and then go with a really simple and easy solution further on.
Absolutely. Yeah, this one can be a little intimidating. It's not generally used for a two-car driveway, something like that. So our next control we're going over is our premium control, and this is another one of our automated controls. So can you kind of tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah. So the good thing you point out, Linda, is that we're talking really about automated controls. So everything we're going to be talking in probably next 2, 3, or 4 slides going to be fully automatic controls, meaning that there's absolutely no interactions needed with that controller. It will detect the snow and temperature, or pretty much precipitation and temperature, and run your system automatically, fully autonomously. You don't need to and again, I'm just kind of sharing the voice of a customer here. You don't need to sort of go check and enable the controller or stop the controller when the snow stops. Again, system does all that for you. So when we're comparing these controllers, since now we know that all of these really controllers are doing the same thing, when we're comparing these controllers, I'm going to try to point out kind of the advantages or some unique features that each controller has. So that was a little bit of an intro for automatic controllers, but now really when we're talking about premium controller, the two main advantages in this controller would be that it can handle an OT or over temperature, or another kind of description to it is high temperature limit sensor, meaning that it can control and prevent the slab from reaching some higher temperatures than needed. And it can also support up to 6 sensors. So anytime you need, maybe it's a light commercial or industrial project that needs more than 2 sensors, that's kind of where you potentially will be utilizing this controller. Or mainly, again, since I was saying about the OT sensor, mainly it's going to be utilizing for any application where you are heating the asphalt. So that's premium controller in a nutshell.
Awesome. So next, can you tell us about our advanced snowmelt control?
Yeah, for sure. Advanced snowmelt control going to be, at this point, I believe it's going to be our best seller, simply because it kind of is a perfect balance of all the things you want. It has a pretty good price point for your typical residential project. It can handle up to 2 sensors. So, usually would connect just one, but you can still connect 2 sensors in case maybe you want to combine an aerial and slab sensors. It still allows you to manually override the system and adjust your after run times. So pretty much, once again, it's just making that perfect controller for, I want to say, 80 to 90% of a typical projects we do. So unless it's something abnormal or something not usual with electricity or amount of electricity the customer has, you're going to be using advanced snow melting control most of the time.
Yeah, I would definitely say that sounds accurate to me. Next, we are looking at our economy control. So can you give us some details on this one?
Yeah, so economy controller comes from a different manufacturer. So that's kind of different manufacturer than the 2 previous units, right? So that's where you see a different sort of form factor, right? You have a push dial that allows you to then select and review the settings and the status of the system on the small screen there. So that's kind of where you have a little bit of new features here, right? You can adjust your set points, your after run times. You can look into kind of the status of the system. You can configure your controller in a few different ways. So that's economy controller. It can also handle up to 3 sensors. And you can combine that controller for your driveway snow melting and maybe roof and gutter de-icing, because this controller can do kind of 2-zone applications. So yeah, once again, a very unique controller. We're still talking about fully automatic operation, but anytime we see a set of clues depending on the application, we will select one or the other.
Definitely. And now this one is a little bit of our odd man out. It's also what I would say, besides the advanced control, in my experience, probably our other most popular model. So this
Yep.
is our value control. And this one is actually going to be mounted outdoors, correct?
Yep. So that's really that control and sensor combination, because you can see right on the top of it there is that actual sensing grid, right? So yeah, that's a combination or combo of kind of two in one, right? You have a brain, the logic of the system inside, and you have the sensor right outside. And because the sensor is right there, you definitely mount the whole thing outdoors, kind of really treat that as the sensor. So you want to mount it so the snow can hit it. And we're going to be talking about the sensors actually in just a couple of slides, but that's the controller that is very popular for kind of small to medium projects, or specifically for the projects that are 16 amps or under, because that's where you actually would not need to use a relay panel. You can connect any project that is 16 amps or lower directly to this controller and pretty much make your system really economical.
Awesome. Now, moving away from automated sensors and talking about manual sensors, this is our timer control, and it's pretty simple. I mean, you can pretty much tell from the picture, it does what it says on the tin. It is a timer, you set the time, and then it will turn itself off when that is over. So can you kind of tell us what this would be used for?
Yeah. So once again, I think we didn't kind of maybe touch and talk about this, but automatic control is always what you want to aim for. You definitely don't want to try to maybe save $100 and get some kind of manual or timer control, because you're just going to end up paying so much more in extra operation, or simply in the system not operating when you need to, because automatic control is what's going to really run the system only when it's needed. And this timer control, as an example here, is where I would use it, is probably in the situations where you always have a dedicated person who can turn it on and off at the right times. That's kind of bullet point number one. Bullet point number two is going to be the surfaces that needs to be heated no matter of what precipitation is. And a kind of interesting application I personally had was the kind of like a what I want to say, like a hot tub areas in the hotels, or just even in the residential places, right? It could be super cold, no snow, but anytime the water splashes out, it's gonna quickly turn into ice. And this controller allows you to just to flip that switch, let it run, and the surface is heated, because that, let's say that owner knows that the people are going to be getting in and out there. So very unique application. You don't want to apply it to just any snow melting. You really want to apply it to the applications where you know, or you feel like you're going to be just always in need of controlling the surface manually.
Absolutely. I do get a lot of questions about this. I think a lot of people assume it's going to be a lot cheaper to use a timer control. It's also,
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit less intimidating to a lot of people. You can look at that and you're pretty much, you have an idea what you're working with. Whereas automated controls, while good because it takes things out of your hands, it can also make people feel a little bit nervous because it's out of their hands. So if you have questions on that, if you're a person who is really looking at, getting a manual control, but you're not sure if that's the best option, feel free to chat with us. We love to talk with you. We are more than happy to walk you through the options and help you decide what'll work best for how you plan to use the system.
Yeah, one thing I probably want to quickly point out for that controller and the Wi-Fi controller is that um, a usual example that I'm bringing when I'm talking about these controls is, what happens if it starts to snow in the middle of the night? Are
Yeah.
you going to set an alarm for 2 a.m.? Are you just going to wake up and turn the system then? Because, setting an alarm is definitely not an option for me. I'm not going to be doing that. And waking up to a driveway, that is covered by 3-4 inches of snow, and then flipping that control on, it's definitely not going to do the, the the performance that you're going to get from an automatic controller that maybe detected that snow at 2 a.m., ran the system for 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever that snow event was, and you wake up to a nice dry driveway, and it's safe to walk on those stairs and go with your day.
Absolutely. So can you kind of tell us what we're looking at with the Wi-Fi control and what it does exactly?
Yeah, so Wi-Fi control, as you can see, it's kind of same enclosure, but instead of a traditional spring-loaded timer, just have a kind of your simple Wi-Fi switch, kind of similar devices that you're going to find in maybe outdoor, indoor Wi-Fi light switches and so on. But mainly the benefit of this is that you can get that set up into your home Wi-Fi and eventually make your snow melting system uh, remotely controlled, right? Let's say it's an application where you don't need melting for every snow event because maybe it's your vacation house and you want the system to be disabled, but then when you're either coming to that location or you are right at that location, you will just manually turn it on through your smartphone app. That's definitely going to be a controller for you. The only
Absolutely.
other uh, the only other probably application I've heard of is where some customers would combine this with an automatic controller, so that way they can almost like disable the whole system remotely because that's what it allows you to do. But then when they are at the location, they can enable it and the system runs fully automatic based on your automatic controller with a sensor. So once again, unique setup circumstances. If you're not sure, you want us to kind of help you decide or choose what controller to use, just definitely reach out to us. It's just so much easier to go through a set of kind of circumstances and better learn the application and get you the right controller.
Definitely. And we did touch briefly so far on our different sensors, so we're going to go over those a little bit more in detail. And these are really paired with controls to do the automating of the system. They're going to be what is out there doing the work day in, day out, telling the system if it needs to be on or off. So can you kind of tell us the different types of sensors that we have and what they do?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking today of course, now when it comes to sensors, we're going to be talking mainly about aerial sensor or slab mounted sensor. And those are going to be your main sensors that will trigger that automation, that will trigger that operation of the system. You're also going to see OT sensor, or like I mentioned earlier, OT stands for kind of over temperature, or we also call it high temperature limit sensors. These are the sensors that just kind of put the system on standby or kind of pause the system just to prevent reaching some really high temperatures. So yeah, that's kind of a quick intro into these snow melt sensors.
Absolutely, and I really like these drawings, kind of showing some information and some ideas on where the sensor should be placed and some things to consider. So, can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, so since we're talking about snow sensors, kind of just obvious, obvious name gonna tell us you want to put it in the area where the snow is gonna hit it, right? So you don't want to have it under any kind of overhang. You don't want to have it under a tree. You also don't want to have it like just 3, 4 inches off, away from the building because the snow, even if it will reach there, it may take some time before the first snowflake will get there. So that's why some manufacturers actually provide nice documents with recommended sensor placements. And if you kind of look into these pictures, you're eventually going to see red dots. Those red dots are indicating those preferred locations for the sensors. And as you can see from our bullet points, eventually there's a number of factors that will kind of determine where you would want to place those. So of course, prevailing winds is your number one thing. That's kind of where you see those lines and you see those recommended spots for the sensors, but also obstructions. You want to know where that sensor is and what's potentially going to be built around it, right? So like I said earlier, make sure you don't have it. Again, simple logic would tell us, don't install that sensor under anything that's going to prevent those first snowflakes to hit it.
Definitely. So this is our one of our aerial sensors, the Air SS2. Can you kind of tell us how this works?
Yeah, simple sensors, kind of bulletproof setup in terms of the logic and operation. That manufacturer uses a set point of 38 degrees and any precipitation to trigger the system. To be more exact, a set point of 38 degrees and lower, together with precipitation, is what's going to trigger it. Many customers will ask, why is it 38? Why can I set it for 34, 35, or anything like that? The main reason for 38 degrees is, first of all, a huge experience in that industry, and that's just being industry proven to be your best set point. Anytime you go for lower temperatures, your air temperature can be maybe 37, 36 degrees, but that surface temperature could be much lower, and you don't want to have the system that's triggering the melting when it's already too cold there, right? So 38 degrees is a great, like I said, industry proven set point, and that aerial sensor is eventually going to get mounted into that preferred location where the first couple of snowflakes going to hit it and the system going to turn on. When we're talking about operation of that sensor, that sensing grid right on the top is actually heated. So the goal for that sensor is to kind of have that a little bit of that water film on the top, right? Some kind of droplets of water. So if it's just a rain mix snow type combination, you're already probably going to get it right there. If it's just kind of snow or any kind of like icy conditions, that heated sensor grid gonna melt it, turn into water, and it's gonna turn on the system as well.
Definitely. And I can actually say it definitely isn't industry standard to do about 38 degrees because my car beeps at 39 degrees to let me know that it might be freezing, and
Yep.
it startles me every single time. So looking at at the slab sensor, so the other type of sensor that we have, this is one of our two options. So can you kind of tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so slab sensor, really, if you think about it, the slab sensor mainly just differs from the aerial sensor in a way where it will be mounted. The kind of the logic and the kind of algorithm is the same. It's still looking for precipitation and the temperature below 38. And when those two conditions are met, it's just going to get the system up and running. But of course, slab sensor gets mounted kind of right at the surface level, right kind of flush with the surface that you're melting. So it gives you sort of another more, I want to say probably more reliable in some applications way to detect the snow. Because, what if it's a system that gets like a lot of wind-blown snow? That's where the slab sensor going to pick it up, but aerial sensor that is maybe mounted kind of off the side of the building or further away, not going to get that snow. So that just really depends kind of what type of application it is. Is it residential? Maybe it's kind of some commercial, maybe it's a car wash, right? That's where the sensor or sensor type will be selected appropriately.
And then our other slab sensor, this is one that can be paired with the economy snow and ice
Yep.
melting control that we talked about earlier. And looking at this one, is there a lot of difference between this and the other one, Anatoly?
No, mainly that's just a different manufacturer. The kind of, again, the logic, the way the sensor really detects the snow and works stays the same because the nature works the same way. But yeah, it's just a different manufacturer, slightly different size. But in the end of the day, really the operation stays the same. We're looking for temperature, we're looking for precipitation to then accordingly trigger the system.
Awesome. All right, so that is actually all that we have here. If anybody has any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. We did get one question that was sent in ahead of time from, let me see who it was, from Nick, and he asked if this can be run under flagstone steps and landing. And the answer is definitely, we see we do see paver applications, flagstone applications. The main thing to keep in mind is that you will want to to, again, most likely automate that, the SCV Dual is probably going to be the best option. That's that value control that we pointed out earlier, where it's just the one outdoor unit. You don't need to worry about indoor mounting or anything like that. So Nick, that would probably be your best option. And if there's questions or you want a little bit more detailed information or want a quote, just reach out to us. I'm not seeing any other questions. If you think of it while we do some of our housekeeping, be sure to type them away. We do have our next webinar on Thursday, August 10th, again at 1 p.m. Central, and this one will be on Zoom, so we're going to be moving our platform, so be sure to watch us there. It's going to be some tips for troubleshooting electric floor heating systems. And we do also offer daily trainings, so be sure to join us at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. We offer short videos where they're actually live. Usually it's hosted by me, often by Anatoly. So feel free to pop on in and learn a little bit more about our products. And we do offer several services here at WarmlyYours. So if you are interested in having us do measuring, installation support, installation or troubleshooting for your heating, let us know and we can talk with you about some of the different options available. For the month of July, we are offering 15% off of our snow melting systems. July is obviously the last time that you want to be thinking about snow. I know it's the furthest thing from my mind, but it definitely is the time you want to plan ahead. This is when you're going to want to actually do that installation and get prepared for the coming winter, so be sure to take advantage of that sale. At the end of the presentation today, we're going to send out a quick email asking about your experience. We'd love to hear your comments and suggestions. I always say I would like to hear any compliments too. If you have something to say about our hair or how funny we are, we'll take those as well. We do want to make sure we're talking about things that you want to hear about. So if you have specific ideas for upcoming webinars or topics, let us know that as well. And like I said, obviously we talked about it a lot today. We are here if you have any questions. These systems can be a little confusing, so if you want to make sure that you're getting all your questions answered, that you're getting the right products, and that you're feeling really confident, be sure to reach out to us. Give us a call, shoot us an email, visit our website. Our website is a treasure trove of information, lots and lots of blog posts, videos, all of our past webinars, everything is on there, so be sure to check us out at WarmlyYours.com. So unless you have anything to add, Anatoly, that is all that we have for today, and we will be signing off. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, my name is Lynn. I'm joined by...
Yeah, thank you guys. My name is Anatoly. See ya.
Awesome. Until next time, stay warm and be radiant.